Bihari Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivara Dadi Gopi Jana Balabha Girivara Dadi Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana Jamuna Tiravana Chadi Jamuna Tiravana Chadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivara Dadi Gopi Jana Balabha Girivara Dadi Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana Jamuna Tiravana Chadi Jamuna Tiravana Chadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Jayom Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajagacharya Astatarasatasi Simadas Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavarinda Ki Srila Prabhupada Ki Gaur Premanandi. In honor of the disappearance day of our founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada, I thought it'd be nice to read a really wonderful class, the transcription of a wonderful class given by Giriraj Maharaj 13 years ago in Mayapur on the occasion of Prabhupada's disappearance. I personally was in New York, when Prabhupada departed, there was a request for the devotees from around the world to be with Prabhupada in his final days, and somebody had to stay back, the cook, the pujari, and the president. I was at that time the president, so I stayed back. Of course, there were many other devotees that also stayed back to maintain the temple. So I wasn't personally present, but Giriraj Maharaj was. And the events that he narrates are so similar to what you read in Lilamrita, but it's of course from his eyes and his perspective. And I thought it's very interesting. You probably will too. The verses that we've been discussing, the Damodar Leela verses, are part of his class. So connecting the Damodar Leela summary with Prabhupada's departure is very interesting. I'm just going to read, and he's a very good narrator. Skipping the first paragraph. Once, on Srila Prabhupada's Guru Maharaj's disappearance day, he said, "On the absolute platform, there is no difference between the appearance and disappearance of the spiritual master." I remember that lecture. It was very famous. It was in Seattle on the occasion of Bhaktisiddhanta's disappearance. No difference on the absolute platform. Both are beautiful, just like the sunrise and the sunset. So, although we feel separation, within that separation, our remembrance of Srila Prabhupada is heightened, and thus we experience the beauty of his presence in separation. To straightaway speak about Srila Prabhupada's departure feels abrupt to me because it is a painful topic, but remembering Srila Prabhupada's words that the disappearance is also beautiful, I wanted to share with you a lesson I learned from his departure, which is connected to the Damodar Leela. A few days before he was to leave us, Srila Prabhupada expressed a desire to travel by bullock cart to different holy places in India. His Holiness Lokanath Maharaj had been traveling by bullock cart to different places of pilgrimage, and Srila Prabhupada was very enlivened when Lokanath Swami reported to him in Vrindavan. And Srila Prabhupada said that he too would like to go on pilgrimage on a bullock cart. Now, the narration that's in Lilamrita, as I recall, is it was circumambulate Govardhan Hill. Here it's go to holy places all over India. He asked Lokanath Swami to arrange it, and Lokanath Swami was enthusiastic, having been encouraged by Prabhupada in such a direct way. He immediately went to organize the cart and make all the arrangements. Govardhan Puja was to take place in a couple of days. Which is strange, because Govardhan Puja already happened, and his departure is after Govardhan Puja by lunar calendar. And Prabhupada said that he would begin his pilgrimage by traveling on a bullock cart to Govardhan Hill to celebrate Govardhan Puja with the Brijvasis. At that time, Srila Prabhupada was bedridden, and one could say emaciated. Radha, you know the meaning of emaciated? Emaciated means his body was nearly finished, like decimated, wrecked, emaciated. He was unable to eat, and he was able only to sip a little liquid. He was gaunt. Gaunt means skinny. And weak, with almost no energy. He would just lie in his bed, and sometimes, with great difficulty, he would speak softly, often so faintly that only those very close to him could hear his words. There were many devotees in the room when Srila Prabhupada had his exchange with Lokanath Swami, and immediately after that discussion ended, and devotees went outside, conflict. They began to express two strong, heartfelt opinions about what Srila Prabhupada should do. And more than that, how we as disciples should relate to him and serve him. The drama unfolds. One group, which included Lokanath Swami and other esteemed senior disciples such as Hansadutta Prabhu and Bharadraj Prabhu, artist, celebrated artist, Fate Museum, Bharadraj Prabhu, and he was one of the original artists. Drew which pictures?
The pictures that we find in the Boston Temple.
Yeah, he was one of the three. He's one of the three. Bharadraj, Muralidhar, and Jadharani, the three. They felt that we should just do what the spiritual master orders. We shouldn't question his order. We should just execute it. And some of the other disciples, many of whom had been attending to Prabhupada's personal care, felt that Srila Prabhupada's health would not sustain his travels on a bullock cart, and that because he was so emaciated, there's that word again, emaciated. You with me? Emaciated? Finished. He had practically no flesh on his bones, emaciated. It would be very painful for him to go. Even if they padded the cart with a mattress, it would still be a basic bullock cart. And the roads in Braja were very rough. So the movement of the cart would jostle him, and he would feel pain. The devotees feared that he might even give up his body on the way. They did not want him to be subjugated to what they foresaw as certain pain and perhaps the dire consequence of his death. So there's two sides. But under the circumstances, the second position was difficult to maintain because Srila Prabhupada was so emphatic. Quote, "Let me travel to all the tirtha sthanas," he had said, to all the holy places. And whatever objections devotees had raised against the proposal, he had countered. "One-day experiment," he had pleaded. "Rest assured, I will not die in one day." When even his Kaviraj had predicted that with all the jostling on the bullock cart, Prabhupada would not survive more than 2 hours. Prabhupada replied, "But I think I shall be cured." Still, Tamal Krishna Goswami, Bhakti True Swami, Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj, Bhavananda Maharaj, and others felt strongly that this, quote, experiment would have dire consequences. But how to convince Prabhupada? In this way, the controversy continued. When Srila Prabhupada had said, "I think I shall be cured," Hansadutta and others took it that he was supporting their position, but the others took it differently. What does it mean that he is going to be cured? It means he is going to leave his body and get a spiritual body. That's how he's going to be cured. Each party was seeing things in a particular way that supported its particular point of view. Finally, things came to the stage where the bullock cart was waiting outside the gate of the Krishna Balaram Mandir. Everything was being readied. And for the devotees who were in the mood that Srila Prabhupada should stay, it must have been like when the residents in Vrindavan saw Krura getting the chariot ready to take Krishna to Mathura. The evening before his planned departure, Srila Prabhupada was lying on his bed. Many of you have seen his bed in his house in Vrindavan. Bhakti True Swami was in the room, and Srila Prabhupada's godbrother, Akinchana Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj, came to visit the evening before. Babaji Maharaj was a very advanced devotee. Srila Prabhupada had said that he was a Paramahamsa. He was always engaged in Harinam, absorbed in Harinam, and he was always blissful. And he and Srila Prabhupada had an extraordinary affectionate relationship. So Bhakti Churu Swami thought, let me appeal to Babaji Maharaj. If he asked Prabhupada not to go, then Prabhupada may listen. So he brought Babaji Maharaj into another room and spoke with him there. Having heard what had transpired, Babaji Maharaj returned to Srila Prabhupada's bedside and told him, I don't think you should go on this parikrama. And when he heard this, Srila Prabhupada replied, if you feel that way, then I won't. Just then, Tamal Krishna Goswami and Bhavananda Maharaj, who had been upstairs in what previously had been Prabhupada's bedroom, came back down in a very emotional state. Prabhupada was aware of what they were thinking, and he said, so, you request me not to go? Tamal Krishna Goswami responded, Srila Prabhupada, we were getting so upset. 2 devotees told me this road is so bad that if you go on this road, you're going to be jolted back and forth. The road is terrible. I can't understand, Srila Prabhupada, why it has to be tomorrow that we have to go. If anybody wants you to travel, I do. But do we have to go when you're in such a condition? I can't understand it. All right, Srila Prabhupada said, I will not go. Thank you, Srila Prabhupada, said Bhavananda. I was in too much anxiety. No, I cannot put you in anxiety. I shall do what you like. My left hand and my right hand, I cannot refuse. Actually, Srila Prabhupada, Tamal Krishna said, we're so attached to you that you practically drive us to madness sometimes. Tonight, we were becoming mad. No, I shall not do that, Prabhupada assured them. All right, he said, agreeing that he would not go. Srila Prabhupada then turned to Babaji Maharaj and said, just see how much they love me. Srila Prabhupada, Tamal Krishna said, the way you deal with us is it simply deepens our attachment every moment. And Prabhupada replied, it is my duty. For the devotees in the room, it was a jubilant occasion that Prabhupada had agreed to wait. As Tamal Krishna Goswami had said, we will take you on Tirtha Yatra to all the places, just get a little stronger. But when the news reached the other group, they were upset. This is not our duty as disciples to try to prevail upon our spiritual master. Our duty is to execute his will. He said he wants to go by bullock cart to Govardhan, and our duty is to arrange for what he wants. Our duty is not to advise him or prevail upon him according to our own perception. The controversy continued until the end. the anniversary of which is today. Srila Prabhupada spent his last 3 days with his disciples at Krishna Balaram Mandir, and the last day he didn't speak. His only words were in the morning, when Kaviraj asked him to drink some juice, and he replied, "Meri kuch icha nahi." I have no desire. After that, Prabhupada didn't speak. He was in a completely internal state of consciousness, and the devotees surrounded him with kirtan. For the last few hours in the afternoon, the leaders opened up the doors to everyone. Young, old, children, men, women, all were allowed to be in the room with him and to reciprocate love with him. Then at about 7:26 p.m., his tongue and mouth moved. Hare Krishna, and he left. As for the controversy, it continued. The feeling still ran strong on both sides, even after Prabhupada left. And I still couldn't determine who was right. There were devotees senior to me on both sides, devotees whom I respected and had served. Personally, I may have been closer to some of the ones engaged in Srila Prabhupada's personal service, but still I wasn't sure who was right. And it was on my mind. It is my habit or practice to chant japa in Srila Prabhupada's rooms when he wasn't there. And after he departed, I did that. I was in his room chanting japa. And behind his bed was an area with his bookshelves. Somehow I found a little corner there and was chanting japa when my eyes fell upon the new volume of Srimad-Bhagavatam that had just arrived, the 10th canto, volume 2. It had been delivered into Srila Prabhupada's hands in his last days. When the devotees had presented the book to Prabhupada, and he was looking at the pictures, everyone could see the love in his eyes. Tamal Krishna Goswami had remarked how much love for Krishna Prabhupada has, as evident from the way Prabhupada had been looking at the pictures of Krishna. So, I took the book. It had gold embossing, especially made for Srila Prabhupada. I opened it up and happened to open chapter 9, Mother Jasoda binds Krishna. I've read a few verses and purports, and then I came to a verse that to me answered the question. Text 19, chapter 9, canto 10. Evam sandarshita hyanga harina britya vasyata. Vasyata. You remember that one, right? Sva vashenapi krishnena yayedam sheshvaram vashe. Translation, Oh, Maharaj Parikshit, the entire universe with its great exalted demigod like Lord Shiva, Brahma, and Indra is under the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yet, the Supreme Lord has one transcendental attribute. He comes under the control of his devotees. This was now exhibited by Krishna in this pastime. Comment. This pastime is encapsulated in the previous verse, text 18. Because of Mother Yashoda's hard labor, her whole body became covered with perspiration, and the flowers and comb were falling from her hair. When child Krishna saw his mother thus fatigued, he became merciful to her and agreed to be bound. And so Giriraj Maharaj is commenting, when I read these verses, I thought, this is what happened. The spiritual master is a transparent medium through which Krishna manifests himself. Of course, in Braja Bhakti, the relationship with Krishna is different. In Braja, Krishna exhibits Nara Lila, human-like pastimes, in which there is complete intimacy and freedom between the devotees and the Lord. In the relationship between the disciples and spiritual master, there is always an element of awe and reverence and duty. Still, duty is meant to lead to love, and Srila Prabhupada did say to Babaji Maharaj, "Just see how much they love me." 1 month earlier, there had been another incident. Srila Prabhupada stopped drinking. Previously, he had said that when his father had wanted to leave his body, he had stopped drinking, and that this was a bona fide way to give up one's body when the time came. Prabhupada didn't make any announcement or anything. He just stopped drinking. Upendra Das, a very sweet devotee, who was serving Srila Prabhupada as Prabhupada's personal assistant, said to him, "Prabhupada, you have to drink. If you don't drink, you'll become dehydrated." And Prabhupada said, "Oh, you want me to drink? Call the GBC." That decision, whether Prabhupada should drink or not, was no small matter. So Abhiram informed the GBC, and the GBC and senior devotees came into the room. Prabhupada said, "If I want to survive, of course I'll have to take something. But my survival means so many inconveniences. Therefore, I have decided to die peacefully." "Everything is in the hands of Krishna," said Tamal Krishna. And that had been the mood coming from Srila Prabhupada, namely, everything depends on Krishna. Many times Prabhupada had said that he would accept whatever Krishna desired. If Krishna allowed him to stay, he would stay. And if Krishna wanted him to go, he would go. Previously, a disciple had asked him, "You said that your Guru Maharaj left early because he was disgusted. Is that the case with you?" And Srila Prabhupada replied, "No. If Krishna allows me to stay in your association, I will be most happy to stay in your association." Now, however, Prabhupada opened his eyes and said, "Krishna wants me to do what I like. The choice is mine. He has given me full freedom." This was a different mood, a completely different answer. And it gave and gives us a glimpse into the intimate reciprocation between Krishna and Prabhupada. We all went into the ante-room and discussed. Kirtanananda Swami's point was most clear and lucid and intelligent. Quote, "If Krishna has given Prabhupada the choice, and if Prabhupada is giving us the choice, then we should ask Prabhupada to stay." Everyone agreed. Yes, we should ask him to stay. Then a devotee said, "But all the GBC men aren't here." And Brahmananda retorted, "Come on, what GBC is going to say they don't want Prabhupada to stay?" So it was decided unanimously we would go back into Srila Prabhupada's room and tell him that we wanted him to stay. Kirtanananda Swami would be the spokesman. When we went back into the room, Srila Prabhupada was lying quietly on his bed. As soon as we finished offering obeisances, Kirtananda broke down and started sobbing. He couldn't speak. Brahmananda, sitting behind him, rubbed his back to soothe him. Then Kirtananda managed, "Srila Prabhupada, if Krishna has given you the choice, then don't go. We need you." Srila Prabhupada asked, Is this your joint opinion? Have you discussed? Yes, yes, we've all met together. We want you to remain and lead the movement and finish the Srimad-Bhagavatam. Prabhupada was silent for what seemed like an eternity. Then he yawned and said, all right. Just like that. He agreed to stay in such a nonchalant way. All the devotees were jubilant within ourselves. We were rejoicing. Prabhupada is going to stay. Prabhupada is going to stay. He is not going to leave us. He's going to finish Srimad-Bhagavatam. He's going to lead the movement. And Prabhupada said, this is real affection. So back to the 10th canto. When I read this verse from 10th canto, I thought of these two incidents and put them together. In both cases, when the disciples had expressed themselves, we want you to stay. We want you to get healthy. Prabhupada had said, this is real love. Just see how much they love me. All the disciples in the controversy about the parikrama were actually on the basis of their realization of their devotion to Srila Prabhupada. But I believe that what Prabhupada really was doing was drawing out our loving sentiments. Beyond us just following the order. Following the order is a given, there's no question. We have to follow the order of the spiritual master. To disobey the order of the spiritual master is an offense against the holy name. It is a basic principle of spiritual life. So, we are not talking about disobeying the order of the spiritual master. We're talking about developing loving feelings for the spiritual master and expressing them to him. When Srila Prabhupada brought us to that stage, in those two incidents, he commented, this is real love. Just see how much they love me. Relating the verse from the 10th canto to what Srila Prabhupada did with us, there's also a parallel between the Damodar Leela and that principle of spontaneous love. Every night during the month of Damodar, we recite the Damodar Astaka, including verse 3. Radha, you know the verse? Iti drikshvalilabhir ananda kunde swagoshim nimajantam akyapayantam tadiyeshita gyesho bhaktairjitatvam punak prema tastam shattavritti bandhe. Translation. By such pastimes, he is drowning the inhabitants of Gokul in pools of ecstasy and revealing to those devotees who are absorbed in knowledge of his supreme majesty and opulence that he is only conquered by devotees whose pure love is imbued with intimacy and is free from all conceptions of awe and reverence. To this Supreme Lord, Sri Damodar, whose belly is bound not with rope but with his devotees' pure love, I offer my humble obeisances. The Damodar Leela shows pure, spontaneous love's special power to conquer the Lord. The Lord comes under the control of such pure love in the same way Srila Prabhupada, not exactly that he came under the control of our love, but I would say that he brought that love out from deep within the recesses of our hearts, and then he reciprocated with us by coming under our control or agreeing to our requests. Last page. So this is a very deep pastime of Srila Prabhupada's. Among the disciples who were around him at the end, it was understood that he was the perfect Acharya. He had taught us by his own example how to live in Krishna consciousness, and now he was teaching us how to die in Krishna consciousness. That was the general idea in those months and weeks, and he was showing us how to retire to a holy place and how to be absorbed in hearing the holy names of the Lord, and how, up until the end, even in his delicate condition, he was trying to push forward the mission. and was translating and dictating purports to Srimad-Bhagavatam up until the very end. In that way, he was showing us how to die in Krishna consciousness. But within that final lesson, he also brought us to this more intimate level of exchange where we could express to him our heart's deepest desires, even in spite of the barriers that I would say he deliberately put up. He deliberately put up the barriers, but then he inspired us to break through them, to reach out to him and express our love for him and ask him to stay with us. Even though Srila Prabhupada has now left that body, we still have that choice. We always have that choice. Do we want him to stay with us or not? And I remember that at that time, although we had been going along in the mood that whatever Krishna wanted was all right, when we understood what really should have been in our hearts, that we wanted him to stay, we thought, maybe we want to be the controllers or be the enjoyers. So there was always that question. Do we want the kingdom of God without God's representative? Or do we want the kingdom of God, with his representative, as their humble servants? And so I pray to Srila Prabhupada that we will always remember this lesson and always pray and act in such a way that he will be pleased to stay with each of us individually and all of us collectively and bind us to his lotus feet eternally. Hare Krishna. So that's November 14th, 2007, 13 years ago in Sridham Mayapur. I can imagine the audience response to that wonderful lecture. Now, I imagine he also edited, the language in precise ways that you can do when you have the transcription in front of you. But it's really, his devotion to Srila Prabhupada is remarkable. His memory of details is similarly remarkable. But it's not just the details, it's the mood of devotion. It's very strong. No matter what Giriraj Maharaj is speaking about, he ends up speaking about Prabhupada. He can't help himself. He's speaking about something, and he goes, and he goes, and he goes, and he said, well, I have to get back to the topic, and he keeps going, and because it's in his heart. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.